Now before you start cooking, turn your fire on to 400. Now the first thing I'll do is cut my fish in half so it cooks even. And I always soak my catfish in salt water before I cook it. That way it'll be firm. Need a big handful of kosher salt. And 1 bottle of water. Put your fish in this water. And now you want to set this fish aside and let it soak for at least 30 minutes. Now you want to make the batter. I'm only cooking 1 fillet, so this is going to be half a recipe. I need half a cup of AP flour. Quarter cup of cornstarch. One teaspoon baking powder. And to this I'm going to add my seasonings. Now you can use 3/4 tablespoon of Old Bay seasoning, and you can add 1/4 to 1/2 teaspoon of cayenne pepper depending on how hot you like it. Personally, I'm not using any cayenne pepper. And this is my own seasoning blend because I need to control my salt intake. Stir this up. And to this you want to add 3/4 cup of beer, or 6 ounces. You're also going to need 1/4 cup of AP flour in a bag for dipping the fish into before you dip it in the batter. Now set this aside and heat your oil up. I'm doing this outside because it's too hot to cook in my room. I'm going to test this oil to make sure it's the right temperature. I like to get it well over 350 so that when I put anything in the oil and the temperature drops, it's going to cook at the right temperature. What I'm going to do now is take this catfish out of the bowl and pat it dry. I'm going to dip the fillets in the flour. I'm going to shake them up. I'm going to dip the fillet down in this batter. And very carefully drop it into the oil. It doesn't take very long for fish to cook. You'll know when it's done when the sizzling slows down. And now I'm going to lift the basket up and let that excess oil drain. You see how pretty this fish is? I'm going to lay it on some paper towel and cook the other one. Now the reason I drop it in there slow like that is so it won't sink to the bottom and get stuck to the basket. Now I'm going to add the rest of this flour to this batter. When that other piece of fish is done, I'm going to drop some of this batter in the oil and make crunchies with it. Now I'm going to let those cook until they're crispy and done. I used to love going to Long John Silver and eating these Crispies that come out of the fryer. I think I like the crunchy bits more than I like the fish or the chicken. You need 3/4 cups of flour, 3/4 teaspoon of baking powder, 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And stir this up. Now you want to pour 3/4 cup of beer into your dry ingredients. I like to use Coors because, in my opinion, it has a depth of flavor that other American IPAs and lagers don't have. This recipe is all about that beer flavor. So you might want to try a dark lager or a red lager or maybe a Guinness and see how it tastes. Now stir it up till it's smooth. If it's too runny, use a little more flour. I'm going to go with 2 tablespoons. Okay, this is a good consistency right here. It should be elastic and stick to itself a little bit. And another thing about this beer is that it does need to be cold out of the fridge because you don't want the baking powder to proof before this dough hits that hot oil. Now you want to use 2 spoons. I'm using this big silicone spoon to dip the batter in, and I'm going to use this tablespoon to push it off into the oil. Now what you want to do is spoon some batter, get the excess off of it, dip it into the oil. And you want to just dip it into the oil a little bit, let it start frying up as you scoop the rest of that batter off of that spoon. And that way it won't stick to the bottom of the basket. When they're golden, take them out. Now I'm going to fry up the rest of them. Well, here they are, folks. Fisherman's biscuits. And this is what they look like. They're light, they're fluffy, and dare I say greasy. And they're just a little bit crispy. They're good. They're not doughy, they're not chewy, they're perfect. I do recommend something to cut the grease. My Uncle Jesse taught me how to make these when I was 13. We used to go down to the Ouachita River and set out throw lines, and we'd sit out there till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning sometimes. We'd sit out there with thermoses full of Fisherman's coffee. And that's instant coffee with a lot of sugar and hot water poured into it. You screw the top on the thermos and you shake the hell out of it. That's Fisherman's coffee. And something Uncle Jesse always said that I'll never forget, he said, a wet ass and a hungry gut's fisherman's luck. He had a habit of slipping on the bank and falling, and he'd land in the mud, get his ass wet, and we'd be out there till we were damn near starving. But it was close enough to home we didn't really have to take food out there with us unless we just wanted to camp out, and sometimes we did. But that's a little piece of my childhood that Fisherman's Biscuits always remind me of. So thanks to Uncle Jesse for teaching me how to river fish and teaching me how to make these biscuits. Now, these are my Fisherman's Biscuits. And I'm not gonna lie, it took several attempts for me to remember how my Uncle Jesse made them. But I finally figured it out. It's more about the consistency and the technique of how to dip them into the oil to make these balls with them. I mean, they'll come out any shape, but they should be somewhat round at least. This one turned out really good. But anyway, that's it. They're just fried dough balls. And I got some malt vinegar here that I like to dip them with. They're really good. They are oily, so you need something to cut the grease. Well, here it is, y'all. Battered catfish with crispy. This fish turned out perfect. It's nice and crispy. It's firm and flaky on the inside. These are the crispy bits. These are good. You don't really taste the beer in the fish. What you get is maybe a slight yeasty flavor if you can detect it, and the carbonation in the beer helps the batter fry up. I've always eaten fried fish with my hands, kind of like eating fried chicken. Well, I'm going to continue eating this fish. Well, cheers, y'all. If y'all ever get a chance, go river fishing. Rig you up some throw lines. Make you some Fisherman's coffee and catch you a mess of catfish. Bring them home, fry them up with beer batter, make you some Fisherman's biscuits. Y'all be glad you did.